The silence in Grandma Martha's Texas kitchen was as thick as the humid summer air. The ticking of the old wall clock was the only sound, each tick a reminder of her solitude. Miles away, in a sterile, mahogany-lined law office, her family gathered. Her son, David, had called just an hour before. His voice was dismissive, condescending. "It's just some paperwork, Mom. You don't need to come all this way. Just stay home and relax." Relax. She hadn't relaxed in years, not since her husband, George, passed away. She gripped the worn edge of her wooden table, the same table where she'd served countless family meals, and stared out the window, a storm brewing in her heart as dark as the clouds gathering on the horizon. In the law office, the atmosphere was anything but somber. Laughter echoed off the polished wood as David, his wife, and their 2 grown children leaned back in their plush leather chairs. They clinked glasses of sparkling water, their faces alight with greedy anticipation. "Dad was always so traditional," David's daughter, Chloe, giggled. "I bet he left everything to you, Dad." David puffed out his chest, a smug smile playing on his lips. "Of course, he did. Who else would he leave it to?" They saw themselves as the rightful heirs, the deserving successors to a fortune built over a lifetime. The lawyer, a stoic man named Mr. Harrison, cleared his throat, the sound cutting through their self-congratulatory chatter. He adjusted his glasses and began to read from the thick document in front of him. The legal jargon washed over them, a boring but necessary preamble to the part they were all waiting for. Then, abruptly, Mr. Harrison stopped. He looked up, his gaze sweeping over each of them, a cold, unreadable expression on his face. The laughter died in their throats. "There seems to be a misunderstanding," the lawyer said, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. The room became uncomfortably quiet. "The will you're referencing is indeed here, but it is secondary to the primary trust established by Mr. and Mrs. George Miller." David scoffed. "A trust? My father never mentioned a trust." Mr. Harrison continued, unperturbed. "He did. And it names a primary beneficiary who is not currently present. In fact, her presence is required." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "I must ask," he said, looking directly at David, "where is Martha Miller?" The family exchanged confused glances. "I told her to stay home," David said, a note of irritation creeping into his voice. "She's elderly. This would just confuse her." Mr. Harrison raised an eyebrow. "Confuse her? Mrs. Miller was the co-signatory on this trust, established 30 years ago. I assure you, she is perfectly aware of its contents." He then turned a page. "Which brings us to a specific provision. The Moral Conduct Clause." He looked at David again, his stare now sharp as a shard of glass. "This clause is activated under specific circumstances, including the documented mistreatment of a primary beneficiary. We have been provided with recordings of multiple phone conversations, including one from this morning, where you, Mr. David Miller, displayed what the trust defines as verbal abuse and profound disrespect toward your mother." David's face went pale. The smugness vanished, replaced by a dawning horror. What does that mean?" he stammered. "It means," Mr. Harrison said, closing the folder with a definitive snap, "that due to your violation of this clause, the entirety of the inheritance is frozen. All assets, properties, and funds are now under the sole control of the primary beneficiary." Just as the crushing reality began to sink in, as the family stared at each other, their dreams of wealth turning to dust, the heavy office door swung open. Grandma Martha walked in. She wasn't the frail, confused old woman they imagined. She stood tall, her eyes clear and steady, a look of calm, unshakable power on her face. As her family gaped at her, penniless and defeated, Martha simply gave a slight, knowing nod to the lawyer. The storm had finally broken. And she was the one left standing in the calm.